The first time the house called my name, I thought it was my sister playing a joke, but instead of her giggling voice, I heard a static-filled murmur that sent shivers down my spine. I was 8 years old that summer, and our family had just moved into the old Victorian house on Elm Street. It was a big, creaky place with a wraparound porch and a sprawling garden out back, but my mom said it needed a lot of work, so we rented it cheap. Dad worked from home as an accountant, and our little sister Lucy was always getting into mischief in the garden, but I was the one who started noticing strange sounds at night. Those murmurs were always there, just beneath the surface of my everyday life. At first, I tried to tune them out, but they were like a low hum in the background, making it hard for me to sleep. I'd lie in bed with my eyes wide open, listening to the static-filled voices that seemed to be whispering my name. My dad thought I was just being paranoid, and my mom said it was probably the wind, but I knew what I heard. One night, I crept downstairs to the kitchen, where the old radio sat on the counter. It was a clunky thing with a wooden cabinet and a crackly speaker, but it was all we had, apart from a little cassette player that my dad used for his rock and roll playlists. I switched on the radio, and the static grew louder, until suddenly, a clear voice came on, broadcasting a news program. But it wasn't like any news program I'd ever heard before. The voice was talking about a town called Greenhaven, a place that seemed to be on the other side of the country. According to the voice, Greenhaven had burned to the ground in the dead of night, with people running wildly in the streets and buildings collapsing all around them. I sat in stunned silence as the voice spoke of flames that rose higher than the church steeple, consuming everything in their path. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that the voice was speaking of a place that didn't exist anymore. I turned up the volume, hoping to learn more, but the voice cut out suddenly, leaving only static. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding in my chest, wondering if I'd really heard what I thought I had. But as I switched off the radio, I knew that I had. The house seemed to be listening, its creaky floorboards and groaning windows echoing with the whispers of the unknown. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The house seemed to be watching me, its walls pressing in on me like a living, breathing creature. I lay awake for hours, thinking about Greenhaven, the town that had burned to the ground. Was it real? Had it ever existed? And why was our house picking up its broadcasts so many years later? The next day, I tried to ignore the radio, hoping that it would just quiet down, but the static continued to grow louder, until I heard another broadcast. This time, the voice was talking about a family that had lived in Greenhaven, a family with a young daughter named Sarah. The voice spoke of how Sarah had perished in the fire, her screams echoing through the streets as the flames consumed the town. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was listening to a broadcast from a place that didn't exist anymore. As the days went by, the broadcasts grew more frequent, and I found myself tuning in every night, hoping to learn more about Greenhaven. But the more I listened, the more I realized that something was wrong. The voice was speaking of events that were yet to come, of fires that would burn and people who would perish. It was as if the house was tuned into a frequency that allowed it to predict the future. I tried to tell my parents about the broadcasts, but they just laughed it off, saying that I was being paranoid again. But I knew what I heard. I knew that our house was picking up signals from a place that didn't exist, and that something was very wrong. As the nights drew in, I found myself drawn into the world of the broadcasts, a world where the past and the present blurred together. I started to feel like I was living in Greenhaven, walking the streets alongside the people I heard about on the radio. It was a strange, disorienting feeling, as if the house was pulling me into a realm where time had no meaning. One night, as I listened to the voice speak of a great calamity that would befall Greenhaven, I realized that the house had been listening all along, waiting for me to tune in. It was a listening post, a station that broadcast to the world from a realm beyond the grave. And I, a small, curious girl, had stumbled upon its frequency, allowing it to speak to me in a voice that only I could hear. As I listened, Transfixed, the voice grew louder, until it was almost deafening. I felt the house shuddering around me, its walls trembling with an otherworldly energy. I knew that I was on the cusp of something momentous, something that would change me forever. And then, just as suddenly, the voice cut out, leaving only static. I was left standing alone in the darkness, the house's presence looming over me like a monolith. I knew that I would never be the same again, that something had awakened within me, something that would haunt me for the rest of my days. The house was quiet now, its static-filled murmurs stilled. But I knew that it was waiting, watching me, its ears tuned to the frequency of the unknown. And as I lay in bed that night, I felt its presence around me, its walls whispering my name, over and over, until I drifted off into a fitful sleep.